Patricia Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This debate, Madam Deputy Speaker, is apparently about courts and tribunal fees. But it is unfortunate that this Government's programme of reform of courts and tribunal fees has been pursued as part of a wider government austerity programme. In practical terms, this means that tribunal fees, introduced in 2013, requires financial contribution from claimants to have their cases heard, and further fees look set to be imposed. When the governance and function of the management and operation of employment tribunals is devolved to the Scottish Parliament in 2017, the First Minister of Scotland has outlined her concerns about this system and has expressed her desire to look forward to abolishing fees for employment tribunals. Access to a fair hearing and fair work should not be the preserve of those who can raise the funds to have their voices heard in the interests of justice, and risks falling foul of the Human Rights Act. Of course, we've heard that part of the reason for introducing such fees for claimants was to discourage weak and vexatious claims, which, whilst costing the employee nothing, could cost the employer significant legal costs. However, since these fees were introduced, we know there has been a significant drop in the number of claims accepted by the Employment Tribunal. Is anyone seriously suggesting that the drop can be accounted for by so-called weak and vexatious claims no longer being pursued? Surely, the real reason for the drop in claims must mean that many of these employees simply cannot afford to pursue their cases due to the costs involved, effectively being priced out of the justice system.
Honourable Lady Giveaway.
I will indeed.
I thank the Honourable Lady for giving way. I agree with what you said. If you talk to organisations like CEB or the Law Centre, for example, in Coventry, they'll tell you that they are inundated with justice at the tribunals because they can't afford it. And the real reason for the cuts as it were, in those sort of budgets was very much about the economics of the government's philosophy to make gigantic cuts, but it denies people basic justice. That's the important point.
I absolutely concur with the honourable gentleman's point. This is not about a justice agenda. This is about an ideologically driven motivation towards austerity that is effectively hitting those who cannot raise the funds for justice. And surely no one can defend this. Research undertaken, as the honourable gentleman has pointed out, by the Citizens' Advice has demonstrated that an eye-watering 82% of those surveyed who were experiencing problems at work said they would be deterred from bringing a claim due to the fees, and only 29% of those respondents were aware that they could apply for a fee remission. We have heard a similar chorus of concern from the Law Society of Scotland and other experts, which show that genuine cases are not reaching tribunals due to the prohibitive fees. The impact on women is particularly damaging, and as a result, unlawful employment practices are undeterred and going unpunished. But let's look at the other evidence we have that such fees are a barrier to justice. On the 20th of June, the Justice Committee published its review into court and tribunal fees and found that the introduction of fees for claimants in employment tribunals has led to a drop, as has been pointed out already this afternoon, a drop of almost 70% in the number of cases being brought forward, and found that further changes are urgently needed to restore an acceptable level of access to the employment tribunal system. That, Madam Deputy Speaker, by definition, shows that the Justice Committee, after its investigations and deliberations, found that the current level of access to the employment tribunal system is not currently at acceptable levels. And that is why, when these powers are devolved to Scotland, these fees will be abolished. Access to justice cannot and must not be limited to those who can afford it. That is not acceptable in any country that seeks to see itself as enlightened and democratic. And despite talk of austerity, politics is about choices, and these choices are based on the shared values of the society in question. It is as simple as that, and to quote the Honourable Member for Bromley and Chislehurst, who chairs the Justice Committee, who said, where there is conflict between the objectives of achieving full cost recovery and preserving access to justice, the latter must prevail. I could not agree more. Worryingly, as has already been pointed out, there has been a lengthy delay in the publication of the Government's post-implementation review of the impact of employment tribunal fees, which aims to assess their effect against the three main objectives of transferring some of the cost away from the taxpayer and towards those who can afford it to pay, and encouraging parties to seek alternative ways to resolve disputes whilst maintaining access to justice. And like the Honourable Member for Bromley and Chislehurst, I am deeply concerned that such an implementation review has not taken place.
Hear, hear.
However, Madam Deputy Speaker, today is an Estimates Day debate, and I crave your indulgence for a few moments. I would like for this House to bear in mind that it's an Estimates Day debate, and I believe it was Benjamin Franklin who said that the only certainties in life were death and taxation. He was certainly right about the first, but recent events may suggest he's a wee bit off the mark with the second. However, there is another certainty in life which Mr Franklin overlooked, and it's this. The one thing you may be sure that will not be debated during a Westminster debate on estimates are the actual estimates.
Hear, hear.
This issue may not exercise the minds of the general public, but that's because it's not well known outside this place just how little scrutiny there is of the spending plans of departments. The scrutiny is negligible, and it has suited successive governments of all persuasions that it should be so. If the public knew just how inscrutable this process was, they would quite rightly be alarmed. The estimates process is a very technical process by which spending is approved by Parliament. And I further crave your indulgence, Madam Speaker, for just a few minutes more, if you will allow me to recall that during the evil debates, the Leader of the House noted the possibility of a review of the estimates process, while seeming to be completely adamant that estimates already allows for affecting the Barnett consequentials. The Procedure Committee on which I sit is continuing to review the estimates process, and many very distinguished and learned experts, far more distinguished than I, Madam Deputy Speaker, from all sides, have argued, while discussing evil, that the estimate process is simply not fit for purpose. The way that the House deals with the estimates and supply process is not sustainable. We need to have proper debate around the supply procedure to achieve clarity on Barnett consequentials. The scrutiny of the estimates process is not robust, and this Parliament has the least scrutinised spending arrangements in the Western world, in this so-called Mother of Parliaments. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, for just 1 minute more, if you continue to crave your indulgence, Adam Tompkins is now a Conservative member of the Scottish Parliament, and he told the Procedure Committee on the 8th of September last year that, and I quote this gentleman for fear of misrepresenting him, "Whatever we do with English votes for English laws has to be made practicable and operational in the light of and through using the Barnett formula. I think that can happen," he went on, "but I think it can happen only if there is a clear opportunity for MPs representing constituencies from across the whole of the UK effectively and robustly to engage in deliberation and debate in the supply and estimates process. And at the moment," he continued, "it seems there is no such opportunity because estimate debates tend to be very wide-ranging about everything other than estimates. The fly in the ointment," he concluded, "is to have this current inability or unwillingness to debate robustly and effectively parliamentary estimates." The process is such, Madam Deputy Speaker, that these procedures simply do not give MPs the full opportunity to scrutinise any Barnett consequentials of England only or England and Wales only legislation. And that is required in a healthy and mature parliamentary democracy. And you need not take my word for it. we have the eminent opinion of a Conservative member of the Scottish Parliament telling us this, an expert in his field, or so I have been told. It should be a consequence of evil that the supply process be reformed in the interest of this matter being a process of development, the very words used by the Leader of this House on the 22nd of October 2015. And I thank Madam Deputy Speaker for satisfying my craving for her indulgence, and I will return now, momentarily, to employment tribunal fees.
Just for clarity, I should tell the House and the Honourable Lady that she is perfectly in order. She's talking about estimates. This is an estimates day, and whatever anyone else says, in my judgment, the points that she is making are perfectly reasonable and ought to be debated. Well,
I thank the Madam Deputy Speaker enormously for that supportive comment. Regarding employment tribunal fees, the SNP government in Scotland understands, as I fear the UK government does not yet seem to, that the introduction of these fees are a significant barrier to justice, not least for women facing maternity discrimination and who cannot afford to take a rogue employer to a tribunal. Last year, a report from the Department of Business, Innovation and Skills and the Equality and Human Rights Commission found that unlawful maternity and paternity discrimination is now more common in the UK workplace than ever before, with as many as 54,000 pregnant women and new mothers, 1 in 9, being forced out of their jobs each year. We in Scotland will listen to the experts. We will abolish these prohibitive and punitive fees. It is the right thing to do, and justice must be the guiding principle of all that we do. When any state puts a price on justice for its citizens, that, Madam Deputy Speaker, is a state in peril. I urge the Minister to reflect on this and reconsider the pernicious effects of such fees on ordinary working people.
Yeah.